All right, let's get started with defining and discussing the topic of prehistory. All right, this is our beginning in early civilizations. So, if we're going to take a look at where human origins began, let's take a look at that term, prehistory. What is prehistory? Well, prehistory dates back to the time before the invention of writing, which is roughly 5,000 years ago. So this is how we define history. Things that are historic tend to be written and recorded, and prehistory tends to be things that occurred prior to the development or invention of writing. Alright, so if you take a look at this cartoon on the side, you'll see that it says, "What would your mom say if you saw your drawing all over the wall like that?" Okay, that's funny. Alright, maybe kinda. But anyhow, here's the deal. That these guys, these cavemen who are drawing pictures on a cave, aren't necessarily doing writing. They may be drawing pictures, but it's prior to the development of a formal written language. And as a result, it would be considered prehistoric, not historic, because they haven't developed an official writing system yet. All right, so let's take a look at three professions that might actually examine prehistory. One is archaeology. So the question here says, what's an archaeologist? Well, they're scientists who learn about early people by excavating and studying the traces of early settlements. Okay, so not quite Indiana Jones, but essentially they look for people and their possessions from the past, and they dig them up and analyze them. We also have anthropologists. These are scientists who study culture and try to recreate a picture of early people's cultural behavior. So things like customs, family life, and even social relationships. So oftentimes anthropologists are working with actually living people, people who are here today, as opposed to archaeologists who live with people who are deceased. However, to be a good archaeologist, you also have to be trained in some anthropology as well. So again, here's a sort of funny cartoon on the side, an anthropologist's dream, a beautiful woman in one hand, the fossilized skull of a Homo habilis in the other. Okay, we also have paleontologists. These are scientists who study fossils and use complex techniques to date ancient fossils, remains, and rocks. So a lot of times bones will end up fossilizing, but also other evidence that humans leave behind can be fossilized. So you basically have anthropologists, you have archaeologists, and you have paleontologists all working in the same sort of discipline in order to sort of discover what the prehistoric past might have been like because of the absence of written records. So, what time periods are we actually looking at in terms of prehistory? First, we'll start off with what's called the Paleolithic Age. Okay? Now, the Paleolithic Age means the Old Stone Age. That's what Paleolithic means. Okay? And that lasted from about 2.5 million years ago to about 8,000 BC. All right, now that's the oldest stone chopping tools that date back to this time period. So this is a time period where, as the picture sort of shows, people might have been sort of semi-nomadic, but they would have had some basic tools, bone, stones, very simple lifestyle, okay? Most likely being hunting and gathering types of people. We also have known what's called the Neolithic Age, and that's the New Stone Age. This takes place from about 8,000 BC until about 3,000 BC in some areas. Okay, so it's different for different folks in different places. Now, they used polished stone tools. They also made pottery, and they grew crops and raised animals. So during the Neolithic age, people were beginning to become sedentary and less nomadic as they developed things like pottery technology and had to stay in one place to raise crops and raise animals. Okay, so this leads us to this topic that we should take a look at, and that's known as the Agricultural Revolution. And the Agricultural Revolution is a period that happens during the Neolithic time period where you can see that major changes in both the temperature and also population take place. So there must be a correlation between these two things. Okay, let's take a look at the average global temperature during this time period. And you can see that there was a drop in temperature from about 53 degrees Fahrenheit down to about maybe 51 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's basically what we call the last ice age. At that point, the last ice age was coming to an end about 20,000 years ago. And you can see that the temperature slowly began to increase over time. Okay? And that's really where the beginnings of agriculture take place. So 15,000 years ago, the temperature began to increase, a dramatic increase up to 10,000 years ago, even more so by 5,000 years ago. And then 1,000 years ago, you can see it begins to level off a little bit. But essentially, the global climate was increasing during that time period because the ice age was coming to an end. Now, what's interesting is the correlation with population. So if I look over here and see the world population, which is measured in millions, you can see that there really wasn't a lot of people on the planet between 25,000 and 10,000 years ago. Okay, and that's the time period where people were basically engaged in hunting and gathering. That's the hunting and gathering stage. You can then see a dramatic increase as you go through the agricultural revolution to move up to right about here. You can see just under 100 million, maybe 90 or 85 million people, and that was about 5,000 years ago. That's a dramatic increase. Right? We weren't even measuring quite in the millions 10 million years ago, or maybe a million people, but really within 5,000 years, you basically had almost 90 million people on the planet. That's really the result of agriculture. And then you can see the post-agricultural revolution, there's still a steady incline, not as dramatic as it had been, but really by the year 1000, there's still a dramatic increase to almost 130 million people. So again, if you look at that rise, there's no doubt that there's a correlation between this rise in population and this rise over here in terms of the global temperature change. So as the global temperature began to get warmer, people engaged in agriculture. Agriculture made it possible for people to basically move from a hunting and gathering society, as illustrated below here on these images, but also to go and become sedentary farmers, produce even more food, and that in turn fueled a population increase that led to millions of people at the same time. So this is important for us today to understand that global climate change in the past has had a dramatic impact on human populations. And so if we consider global warming today, we might want to think about what the global impact that might be on future populations. It's happened in the past, and it can happen in the future. So that agricultural revolution really led from people being hunters and gatherers to becoming sedentary farmers living in towns and cities and things of that nature. And as a result, it changed human population and it changed human history. So again, we went from hunting and gathering societies to becoming sedentary farmers, people who basically stayed in one place and grew food. Right? So if we take a look here, this is an excellent map that shows the emergence of agriculture between the years 5000 and 500 BC. And if you look, you can see on the key down here in the corner that there's obviously a variety of things. We've got bananas, barley, corn, and cotton. We've got grapes, olives, potato, rice, sorghum, soybeans, and wheat. You can also see on the key that the areas that are in color, such as this red area here, represent agriculture by about 5000 BC. We also have the yellow representing agriculture by 3000 BC, and the purple by agriculture by 2000 BC, and then the green is agriculture by 500 BC. So basically what these show is that these red areas are actually located on the major river valleys that we're going to be studying. The Nile River, over here you've got the Tigris and the Euphrates in Mesopotamia. You've got the Indus River Valley, and over here you've got the Yellow River Valley in China. So those are the places where agriculture is first believed to have taken place. The yellow areas, which is the next area at 3000 BC, stretches along North Africa, Southern Europe, and sort of this sort of central West Asia area. Today we might call it Turkey. Okay? And we also see that the purple area, Southern India, southwestern parts of China, also were added by about 2000 BC, and then the green area itself is most of what we would consider that old world agricultural area by about 500 BC. So agriculture spread pretty quickly, and of course people in these areas adopted agriculture very quickly as well, and you can see by the key it actually grown a variety of crops. Also, don't forget that at this same time period there was agriculture taking place over here in Central and parts of South America. This is some new discoveries that have recently been sort of explored by historians and archaeologists, and they're beginning to understand that the Americas may have had agriculture quite early, and maybe in some cases as early as parts as the Old World. All right, for homework I asked you to address the following question. What effect did agricultural revolution have on population growth, and why? Okay, I would like you to take a minute and actually write your answers to this question in your journal. To be able to answer this question, you need to really look at this agricultural emerges map that we just went over, but also the temperature and population chart that we examined a few minutes ago. You really need to take a look at all three of those to see if you can come up with an answer for what you think might explain that. All right, so again, what effect did the agricultural revolution have on population growth, and why? All right. I'm going to actually give you the answer now so that you can actually take a look and see how you did. And here's what I would put down if I was answering this question. All right, my answer would look something like this. As temperature rose, so did the ability to produce a greater quantity and variety of food. Diet improved, helping to fuel an increase in the population. So this is what I want you to keep in mind, is that whenever we talk about some kind of an agricultural revolution or a major change in agriculture, it usually results in the production of more food. Therefore, it creates a better diet for people. People are eating better, and as a result, they have excess energy. Oftentimes, what they do with that excess energy is use it to create more people, and as a result, that fuels a population growth. So, again, when agriculture changes and more food is produced, diets improve, people are better fed, they eat better, they have more energy, they use that energy to produce more people, and as a result, population grows. And we'll see that again and again throughout the year, every time we look at the changes in agriculture that take place in different places of the world and at different time periods. Okay, that's it for the Prehistory screencast. See ya.